Welcome to this Advent devotional series. This is day 25 of our series. I am Reverend Lester Spees, and I have the privilege of serving as pastor at Memorial Lutheran Church in Glendale, Wisconsin. During this Advent season, I will be reflecting on some tough questions that come from Scripture and on some sacred spaces that have helped me to respond to those tough questions. Thank you for joining me in this journey. This devotion is for Wednesday, December 21st, 2022. And our tough questions come from Psalm 27, verse 1. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom then shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom then shall I be afraid? The notion of fear is mentioned a lot in the Bible. Depending upon the translation and your own understanding of the concept, various sources say you can find the mentioning of fear in the Bible somewhere between 100 and 500 times, give or take a few times. In my own reading of Scripture, I have discovered that Jesus says, "Fear not," more often than he says, "Love one another." I think the reason why Jesus has to tell us so many times is because we are not very good at living into this reality. Fear is all too present in the world and in our lives. We do fear. We fear lots of things. We fear things from our past. We fear things in the present. We fear what might happen in the future. We fear things we see. We fear things we don't see. We fear the known realities in our lives. We fear the unknown realities in our lives. That may not be true for everyone in all circumstances. However, I am convinced that there is more than enough fear to go around. It is something we know all too well. It is something that causes us not to move forward in our lives in the way God intended for us to live as God's children. So Jesus tells us over and over again, do not be afraid. One of the many things that I have feared in my life is the reality of darkness. My family will tell you that I do not like a lot of light, and they would be correct. I would much rather have a small amount of light in a space than to be bombarded with what I think of as too much light. Too much light can be overwhelming for me. However, too much darkness can be far worse. I can see more. I can get more easily confused. I can more easily get lost. I can more easily get frightened when there is a complete absence of light. Light is good, even for those of us who don't like a lot of it. On the farm where I grew up, we were located miles away from any human activity, especially in the evening. The sounds and lights of the small town that shared my mailing address was roughly 10 miles away from the family farm. As a result, when the moon was in its new moon phase, life was extremely dark on the farm. I dared not go into the backyard without a flashlight. In fact, I dared not go even with a flashlight. It was way too scary. I might stumble into a hole or come across a snake sliding its way through the grass. The prospect of either thing or any number of other things happening to me was way too frightening, so I didn't take a chance. Yet, when the moon was in its full moon phase, the story was completely different. A midnight stroll through the pasture was a beautiful and welcomed experience. Rubber boots were recommended just in case one of those slippery snakes decided to join you on the journey. Flashlights were optional, with nothing to hinder the natural light. The light of the moon really was enough for you to see where you were going. The light of the flashlight sometimes got in the way of truly seeing the beauty in creation. Most of the time, as a child growing up on the farm, I was way too tired to stay up until it was late in the evening. But summers were often a time when I had fewer responsibilities during the day. I could sleep a little later the next morning, which meant I could stay up a little later the previous night. Such midnight strolls were rare, but beautiful. One of the things that I feared most, the darkness, seemed a lot less scary with the light provided by the full moon. These strolls opened my eyes to the reality of the more that was happening in creation than I realized by the light of the day. I saw new animals not seen in the daylight hours. I heard new sounds that did not exist when the sun ruled the sky. I learned that God's creation was vast, beautiful, and mysterious. The night was not a time to fear, but to rejoice in the wonder of all that God has made. These days, I don't venture out into the darkness as much as I did when I was a kid. The city lights of the evening make things appear different than they did on the farm. It's harder for me to see with the reality of the lights made by humanity. But my memory still takes me back to those times when darkness was made a little less dark by the light provided by nature. The family farm during a midnight stroll was a place where it was revealed to me that God's light shines even in the times of deep darkness. There was no need to fear what was happening around me, for God was providing me light for my journey. And God still provides light for that journey in the gift of Jesus. Since I have Christ, whom shall I fear? No one and nothing. For Jesus is my light and my salvation, my stronghold in life. He lights the way for my journey, even when times seem darkest and scariest. Therefore, I need not be afraid.